Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to the Classic Universal Horror Podcast. I am your host, Jay Jennings. I am a classic Universal Horror historian and collector. And on this show, we review all the great classic Universal Horror actors and films and everyone who is involved in that great bit of filmmaking from Universal Pictures from 1931 to 1948. But also, once in a while, we like to throw a curveball and we want to do something different. And today's show is that day, and we're going to be reviewing Mad Doctors of Poverty Row. That's right, all our classic Universal horror villains like Lugosi and Karloff and Carradine and Zuko and even Lionel Atwill, who all, after their Universal career ended or took a break, so to speak, they went to Poverty Row. And I'm going to be discussing these Mad Doctors with the one and only Courtney Joyner, writer, director extraordinaire. Hey, Court, how's it going?
Hey, I'm totally charged for George Zuko.
So this is a different show. We're going to be not talking about Universal, but Poverty Row, and mostly the two studios, PRC and Monogram. We'll throw in a Majestic in there. But it's important that we discuss this, Court, because this was another career for these actors.
It was, and none of these the actors, especially the character guys, were ever really on long-term contracts because, as I said, if somebody did, if you're Universal and they were doing the movies that we happen to love, etc. But were we paying attention when they went to Paramount or when they went to MGM? And they freelanced.
Right.
And if somebody came up with the money, then they made themselves available.
Yeah, I think we need to distinguish between the major studios, Universal and MGM and Paramount. That was the big money. That was the big bucks where they were big stars. But the smaller studios, they were called Poverty Row. And just to give a background about Poverty Row, Court, it was a slang for the small studios that produced B movies from the 20s to the 50s. They typically had much lower budgets, lower production values than those of the major studios. Although these studios were all basically located in the same area in the vicinity of Gower Street in Hollywood. So the term doesn't necessarily relate to any specific physical location. Many of the films produced by Poverty Row Studios were mostly westerns. I'd say a big chunk, some comedy, some adventure, some crime genres. It was a place where the big actors can go, as I said, once maybe their career stalled or the studio blackballed them, like they did with Lugosi for a minute. But the main two, I think, we want to talk about Poverty Row is because it was a boost for the studios. Like if a known actor like Lugosi or Karloff provided an inexpensive but effective, marketing hook. They could advertise an all-star horror cast and attract an already made fan base, and then provided a steady source of income. As opposed to working at the major studios. Karloff, Lugosi, a lot of the others became synonymous with the genre after achieving, their big fame with Universal. But they faced typecasting, Court, and the waning fortunes, of course, led them to that B-movie market. And then the combo of factors created this symbiotic relationship between horror stars and low-budget film producers. So it was very lucrative for these main stars, wasn't it, Court?
No, it was. And you had also a situation with, say, Boris Karloff, for example, during the horror ban that was really initiated in England because of the reaction to The Raven, and that hit Bela Lugosi quite hard because he was having a lot of trouble finding work, although he would appear in movies like Postal Inspector and things like that. But Karloff, for example, found a great haven with Monogram because they had initiated the Mr. Wong movies, and which was their version of Charlie Chan from the Hugh Wiley stories in the Saturday Evening Post. And so suddenly there he was as a Monogram star doing these 5, 6 murder mysteries. and it really kind of saved his bacon during that time because they were starring parts, and he was the one that they built the movies around. And Bela Lugosi was in and out of whether he was working at Monogram or PRC or whatever, but he always kind of kept his or was forced to keep his options open, even as things turned around after the Son of Frankenstein, and they could, everybody was working all over town, but of course, the long term star contracts was what everybody wanted, and they just weren't going to happen, say, for somebody like Bela Lugosi anymore, unfortunately. And whereas opposed to Boris Karloff by the 40s, he came back to Universal after the incredible success of Arsenic and Old Lace on Broadway and got a real solid paycheck when he did The Climax and House of Frankenstein back to back, and then moved over to RKO. Well, during that same period, there's Bela Lugosi, who did not appear with Karloff in either one of his Return to Universal movies, and he's back at Monogram. He's back to, with the East Side Kids, and he
Right.
had his own spate of The Invisible Ghost and all those films.
Yeah.
So, as you said, it really was a safe haven. And in the meantime, for a character actor like George Zucco or Lionel Atwill, um, they could be now stars in a lower budget movie, and in fact, were teamed up for by PRC for a Fog Island,
Right. Well,
and
I was going
that
to
was
say,
not going to happen. Maybe.
right. I was going to say, Court, because we're going to discuss all the films that they made, mostly Mad Doctor films. A lot of them they played like a crazy villain or something or a murderer. But the focus of this show is, the Mad Doctors of Poverty Row. And most of the films that Zuko and Lugosi and Karloff and Atwill and Carradine made were for two of the Poverty Row studios, was Monogram and PRC. And this little quick background on PRC, Producers Releasing Corporation. They started in '39, lasted until '46. It was absorbed into Eagle Lion Films. They put a huge amount of westerns and gangster films out, including Edgar G. Ulmer's film noir classic Detour, which was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, coming from a small studio. And then you had Monogram. They weren't the only two, but they were the ones that put out the most horror. They were created in '31, and after the attempted '35 merger of Monogram into Republic, I guess Ray Johnston's Ray Art took Monogram independent. And from the following decades, they did college teen musicals, with popular swing bands and and stuff like that. The films of Kay Francis, and as you mentioned, the Bowery Boys. And they did horror, low budget horror. Monogram and PRC were famous for that. And as you said, it gave a chance for the character actors like Zuko and Atwill to shine in starring roles where they maybe weren't given the chance by Universal. So what we're going to do, Court, is I'm going to showcase a couple photos and some plots, and you can give the background on these films, and like you always do, your expertise, the inside scoop. Because when we do this show, it's kind of like giving you a mirror to the past on what it was like during the 30s and 40s when these great classic horror films came out. And Court, sometimes these low-budget Poverty Row horror films were almost better than the Universal horror films. Not all the time, but they're fun, they're entertaining, they're interesting, especially Face of Marble, which we'll talk about, which is a great unheralded Carradine low-budget film. But I think the first film, we're going to just get it out of the way, would be Lionel Atwill's venture into Poverty Row as a mad doctor in The Vampire Bat, Court. And I'm going to, I guess, show some pictures from there, and then we can discuss it. There he is, I guess, getting ready to do his transfusions. The plot of The Vampire Bat was when corpses, it came out in '33, corpses are drained of blood. They begin to show up in a European village, and the town elders suspect a vampire. The policeman, played by Melvin Douglas, doubts the existence of vampires, but Dr. Otto von Niemann, the original Dr. Niemann, Lionel Atwill argues to the contrary, and fingers point to the village idiot, Dwight Fry, in an early role. But after local vigilantes get him out of the picture, the killings continue. And then, of course, the policeman tries to keep a cool head as he searches for possible supernatural answers. The vampire bat was kind of scary back in the day, wasn't it, Court?
Yeah, it was. And, this is the thing when the lower budget studios would choose to say, hey, can we get this actor? Can we get that actor? So much of it was dependent upon what they had just done. And again, Lionel Atwill at this point in his career, because he had had already the two major horror hits at Warner Brothers, Dr. X and Mystery of the Wax Museum. So this was kind of a big deal for them to get Lionel Atwill, and they got Fay Wray. So the movie is made for pennies, and they shot sections of it at Universal actually, and Fay Wray, of course, also had been in Mystery of the Wax Museum. So this was a little bit of a crown jewel for Majestic to do this film and pour some money into it, and it did okay. And again, Atwill was riding a little bit of a crest here, and it's a gruesome movie, and also anything pre-code, and this just skirts that edge a little bit. Always brings up bizarre ideas of with kind of gruesomeness that may only exist in the dialogue or whatever, or in concept, that we don't necessarily have to see all the details. But sometimes it can be a little bit surprising, um, and that I think that's certainly in the Vampire Bat, which and again, when you've got Lionel Atwill in here, this was before his big scandal. You've got a real predator going after Fay Wray.
Right. Yeah, the Vampire Bat's a classic. So that was one of the first of the Poverty Row by Majestic. And then, as we said, Karloff and Lugosi and Zuko made a ton of these Poverty Row films. But, the sets were reused, the locations were reused. They're shot in a week or two. But as I said, they're fun and they're enjoyable, and they're almost on the same. They're almost remembered as a universal classic horror is. So anyway, Cord, let's do the Mad Doctor roles of Boris Karloff, and I think we'll talk about Before I Hang, which was not no in particular order, but also I was going to say that Karloff, he was in so many Poverty Row horror that began with the word the man they could not hang, the man who changed his mind, the man with 9 lives. But Before I Hang is a fun film. He's in prison for euthanizing. It's from 1940. A patient, Dr. Garth, played by Karloff, spends his time on death row trying to concoct a serum that will reverse the aging process. So he injects himself with the potion and miraculously becomes younger. But unbeknown to him, he's also tainted by the blood of a homicidal maniac. How inconvenient, Court. That was used in the formula. So after his sentence is commuted, he returns home to his loving daughter, but soon is compelled to go on a murderous rampage. Before I Hang is one of the better Karloff films, Court, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Now, of course, that's the thing, Jay. That's even though they were kind of relegated to Poverty Row by snobs like Louis B. Mayer, but that series of movies that Karloff did, that's all Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah, Before I Hang, The Man with 9 Lives, The Man They Could Not Hang, The Devil Commands, it's all Columbia.
We know I stand corrected, but I wanted to throw them in because they weren't really, I mean, without them, we wouldn't have much of a Karloff besides the Ape or the Mr. Wong
Yeah, the Ape,
series.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we'll give an exception for these few for Karloff, at least for him. So tell us more about Before I Hang. It had high quality on the set there.
Well, the thing is too about the quote unquote Mad Doctor series that Karloff did. Oh, there's Edward Van Sloan. Uh, the Nick Grinda was the uh, director of most of these films, except for The Devil Commands, which may be the best of the bunch, and that was a very young Edward Dmytryk handling that one. And there was a kind of a continuity here, and actually also a slickness to these movies. There's you can see Bruce Bennett, and that was kind of the big advantage of this series of movies that Karloff did, is that it also was a great place for Columbia to work through their young contract players. So you see people like Evelyn Keyes and Lloyd Bridges and Bruce Bennett and uh, these individuals, Roger Pryor, in these films. And, if they weren't going to, didn't have a Howard Hawks movie or something like that going on, then boom, they would do one of the Columbia Karloff Mad Doctor pictures, which were made very quickly. And I think I think they've always been kind of underrated because Karloff is consistently very, very good. And honestly, when someone watches The Man They Could Not Hang, and where he traps a jury and folks who are responsible for him going into court and being convicted of homicide, it's Saw. It literally is. I mean, he traps these people with booby traps all over his house, and he's going to kill them. So it's
Right,
there it is, right, for everybody to see.
right,
And this early version of that, but he is always a medical man who has stepped outside, uh, let's say, his Hippocratic oath, and seeks revenge either through injections or
right. Well,
surgery or whatever it is
right.
on the people who've wronged him.
Let's show some. Let's go segue right into the man they could not hang. And you're right. He's that look. He always gives that look like I'm going to get my revenge on you. Here he
Absolutely.
plays 1939. So he plays Dr. Savard. He creates a life-saving artificial heart, but his experiment is interrupted, and he is sentenced to hang when the authorities intervene. Following the death of one of his subjects, Savard promises revenge if I escape the gallows. So you're right; these were all very well done, Court. As I show photos from it, these you're right; they were a step above Poverty Row, and it basically was a way for Karloff to work in these films. And that the guy on the left there, I forget his name. He's in a lot of Little Rascals movies too. So when he works, it's just okay. I think back in the day, people maybe didn't discern between Universal and you know what I mean. When you went to see a movie, you didn't care who made the movie, who the studio was. You just went to see Karloff.
Yes, these there he is with Byron Folger. Uh, these films were completely and totally star vehicles for him. And Karloff had reached a point where his name was so significant. Of course, this was also Karloff period where they would bill him without his first name at times, and he had been built into a real movie star. So whether he was at Columbia or he went to Warner Brothers, or as we said, he found himself back at Monogram, he was he was a star. It wasn't just a matter of stepping down into a production that had a lower budget than he was used to, or something like that, which of course was true. But it was a case of Boris Karloff being 100% the lead in these films, and then surrounded by all these supporting actors.
Right. And which brings us to The Devil Commands, which is another great Karloff vehicle, except for maybe some of the Mr. Wongs, some of them, and The Ape. I mean, he always plays a sympathetic character somehow, trying to save the world or come up with a cure. And it's just either something he mixes blood with a killer or something, a surgery didn't go right and he ends up getting the wrong side of the stick and, ends up, either being killed or he wants revenge on somebody. But in The Devil Commands, he's overcome by grief after the accidental death of his wife. He plays Dr. Blair. He becomes obsessed with using his experiments to communicate with her. That seems to be an ongoing trend, either with Lugosi and Karloff trying to communicate with the dead wife, which I guess predates Pet Sematary, of course. Anyway, having captured her brainwaves on a machine, Karloff must find a receptor for them, and he tries using a single live subject. But of course, after several failures, Blair quits his university job and hides out in a small New England town where he adds more unsuspecting subjects, both dead and alive, to see what happens. So there's an ongoing theme in most of these court, but for as I said, you're going there to see Karloff play these type of roles.
There was always the idea of, and whether you know, it's back to say something like Black Friday or any of the Columbia pictures, even the Ape, which he did over at Monogram, written by Kurt Siodmak. There was always the streak of the good experiment gone wrong, that his motives were for the good of mankind, or he was going to break through some sort of remarkable scientific discovery. And that always lent his characters that streak of sympathy. And in The Devil Commands, certainly because he speaks to his wife quite a bit, and he's just longing to reconnect with her. So we can't be that upset, even though he sacrifices some innocent people uh, to his ends. The ends are always something that we can understand. It's not just megalomania and psychotic desire. And I think that, and Karloff, of course, brought this great sympathy to those performances. But you're right, the idea of, and Bela Lugosi in several of his Monogram pictures, that was it. I want to revive my dead wife. I want to communicate with my dead wife. John Carradine in Revenge of the Zombies, the same thing.
Right, and I think because, well, you know what? How much can you do as a mad doctor besides revive a monster, build a monster, or bring back your dead wife? This one's an interesting one. The Man Who Changed His Mind, which is the original title, Court, where Karloff, 1936, he plays Dr. Lawrence. He's rejected by the science community. What's new? That's the first thing that gets them going is they rejected my viewpoint. When he starts researching the origin of the mind and the soul, which I guess is taboo back in the 1930s. So it sparks him to use his discoveries to save his research and further his own causes, which then, of course, soon spins out of control. Yeah, not much makeup. It's just, I think they were trying to do a little bit something different, Court, too. It's like he doesn't have to be Frankenstein, or a scarred, I guess, evil villain. It's basically his hair changes a little bit. Maybe he has a little afro in one of the movies, and another one he has short hair. And here he's got kind of a long hair. So tell us about the man who changed his mind.
Well, of course, the Man Who Changed His Mind. This was done when Karloff went back to England, and when he also did The Ghoul, and things uh, again offered. Of course, he so wanted to go back and see his brothers, and he goes back as a movie star. And the thing is, The Man Who Changed His Mind was one of the early films directed by Robert Stevenson, who would, of course, later direct Mary Poppins and Jane Eyre, and was married to the actress Anna Lee, who would co-star with Boris Karloff in Bedlam.
Oh,
And it's a good movie. And again, the focus of Karloff. I mean, it's in this case, it's one of those things with an experiment where he loses control of what happens to himself, and which is the ongoing theme. What man should leave alone?
Right. And then it ends with well, his last one for them was The Man with Nine Lives, which is a personal favorite of mine. 1940. He plays Dr. Leon Cravel, missing for 10 years. He's been found frozen solid in a block of ice. He was conducting forbidden experiments in human cryogenics. So they changed it up a little bit, Court, when he became trapped with his own freezer. This film is clawing for a remake. He's thought out by Tim Morgan and Judy Blair, but he still vows to continue his research using his enemies as guinea pigs. This is one of my favorite non-Universal Karloff films, Court.
I actually used to have a print of this movie in 16 millimeter.
Wow. What do you think of
And
it?
oh, oh, I think I still prefer the. I think The Devil Commands is the best of the Columbia Karloffs. But this was another one directed by Nick Grindy, and it's it's got that whole, again, the whole thing, the purity of an experiment that goes wrong, and the intention is great, but there's always this. It's always interesting because these guys always tend to make these kind of class distinctions of well, no one's going to miss this hobo, no one's going to miss this person and that person because they're not really contributing to society. So I can freeze them, I can take their brain, I can dismember them, or whatever in the world it is that they're going to do, because they feel that the sacrifice of those lives is worth the final result of the experiment.
Right. Yeah, it's a great film. And so that ends the Karloff kind of, not Poverty Row version, but kind of Poverty Row version plus, not light, because, they're a step above the usual, fodder from those studios. But Lugosi, that is Poverty Row. There's no mistaking it. I mean, from the Ape Man to Invisible Ghost to Return of the Ape Man to The Corpse Vanishes to the Human Monster, but they're all fun. They're all classics, and we're going to go over them right now. And we'll start with The Invisible Ghost, which is a great film. I like it because it's just the ghost yet is kind of most sinister, and the plot is so absurd. His wife, who disappeared, she's living in the shack, downstairs. But the actual plot is Dr. Charles Kessler becomes a homicidal maniac when his brain damaged wife, who lives in hiding, appears to him through a window. And this triggers a hypnotic trance during which he strangles his victims by putting like a blanket over them and his close up of his eyes. And after her former lover, Ralph Dixon, is wrongly convicted and executed for the murders, his identical twin brother, Paul, arrives. I mean, that'll save on getting a new actor. Cordy, you don't have to pay him twice. The mystery is solved when Paul and the police witness Kessler, in his trance, commit another murder, revealing him as the invisible ghost. Remember, they said, "Was it Paul?" "No, Dr. Kessler, it was you." And it's just, it's a creaky little film, Court. I mean, you could take what you want from it, but I think it's fun. What do you think?
Well, with films like, well, The Devil Commands being an example, The Invisible Ghost, that these were also the training grounds for a lot of filmmakers. And their first or second film, this was Joseph H. Lewis, long before Gun Crazy and The Big Combo, and his wonderful career in film noir. And he did a great job on this movie. And you've got also the terrific Clarence Muse as Lugosi's butler, who ends up assisting him at different times. And Clarence Muse was actually the first choice to play Sam the Rabbit in Casablanca.
I can see that. Yeah.
And then, yeah, then Dooley Wilson became available. And but this is a good neat little movie. As you said, it's a creepy film. I think sometimes with the Lugosi monograms, uh, the idea of they had him, so they wanted to use him. They wanted everything to be about Bela Lugosi, and everything was built around him, whether it was nonsensical or not. And the fact that, maybe the sets weren't the best, and maybe this was there was a shortage here and a shortage there, and kind of this overall seedy quality sometimes to these films because they were shot very, very quickly and for very little money. The money was Bela Lugosi. That's who got the budget. So thank God. But also, Jay, there was always that weird thing, and trying to dissect it without being inside Bela Lugosi's head is almost impossible, because after Dracula and all the problems that he had even getting that part, Lugosi never strayed far from the independent producers. He's a star after Dracula, and he's almost immediately doing serials. And he yes, he was going to go to MGM and do films like Mark of the Vampire, even Ninotchka. But for the horror films and whatever, I mean, he was an available actor, and it meant that he wasn't always the Death Kiss and Murder by Television and movies like that. So that by the time the quote unquote Monogram 9 came along, he had quite a serious background, not only with Monogram Pictures because of films like Mysterious Mr. Wong, but this whole thing with the Mad Doctors, he was very comfortable. He was in a place where he was a star
Yeah,
and
that
was
was
treated that way.
yeah, that was his comfort zone. Absolutely, playing
Yeah.
the Mad Doctor. I mean, even before John Carradine did it, every film was a Mad Doctor in the 50s and 60s, but Lugosi was doing, I mean, you can't be in every Universal horror classic. There's only about 30 of them. But he had his own line, as you said, of low budget, poverty row horror. I mean, whoever his agent was, that's why he had, he lived in Hollywood. He had that lavish lifestyle, smoking cigars, multiple dogs, big house, swimming pool, married multiple times. He had to pay for this stuff. So you could say, before Nicolas Cage, there was Bela Lugosi. I mean, he just took the work, maybe making a couple films, more than a couple of films a year, because it would take a couple weeks to make. But anyway, the next one I would probably say is the nadir of Lugosi's career. I mean, out of his 75, 80 films or so, this is probably, the consensus that the Ape Man is probably the worst. But it's such a fun movie. It's so fun. And he almost looks like it's almost like he's playing the Wolfman. Even though he's supposed to be an ape, the hair on his hands or whatever on his face, the makeup. To me, it's like the Wolfman. But let me read the plot line for the Ape Man, and it's just ludicrous. It's made in '43. Plays Dr. James Brewster, a scientist who accidentally transforms himself into a half-man, half-ape creature using ape spinal fluid. So desperate for a cure, he believes he needs injections of human spinal fluid. That only makes sense, right? The human spinal fluid will outdo the ape one. So it forces him to commit murders to acquire it, because no living, breathing person is going to give you their human spinal fluid. But anyway, aiding him in his captive gorilla, and the film follows the efforts of a newspaper journalist played by Louise Curry, another horror actress in her own right, and Wallace Ford, who's in everything, as they investigate the strange killings and try to uncover the truth. And it's got, Una Merkel also court. It's a fun movie, even though it's pretty bad.
And it is. And I think that one of the things to show Bela Lugosi's dedication to what he was doing is he takes on this ape-like stance
Right, he's hunched
when he
over.
moves. Yeah, and that's he didn't just blow it off, but the makeup, as you said, very much reminds of the Wolfman, but is his face is exposed,
Right.
so you absolutely are not going to lose the star identity of who is there under the hair.
And this is probably one of the worst still shots of any horror film in history. But as I said, you got to take these with a grain of salt. This film represents what Poverty Row was. I mean, this was the nadir of a horror star's career. But back in the day, you didn't see it like that. I mean, if this is a 1940-41 audience, they're enjoying this. It's another hour of romp of Lugosi playing a mad doctor, only this time he's a hunched over gorilla, who's looking for a cure. So I mean, we look at it through our own eyes, but back in the day, I'm sure it was quite entertaining, Court.
Oh yeah, and the and also too, Jay, that's the thing is that we look at these movies, particularly from outfits like PRC and uh, Monogram, and even a company like later on like Republic, whoever it might be. The whole thing is that studios still owned theaters at this time. Now there were independent theater owners who were not being supplied by Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox and all those guys, and they needed to book movies. That was the target for all these films from these independent producers were all the theater owners who were not affiliated with the studios, and there were thousands of them
Right.
because the country was movie crazy. So if you were, sitting there waiting for the latest Betty Davis or Humphrey Bogart movie, and your neighbor next door was going to be playing Bella Lugosi or Hoot Gibson or whoever it might be. But that was the reason these Poverty Row companies existed because there were movie screens that had to be filled.
Right, and they played double bills as well. Anyway, to follow up on that, they made a sequel which wasn't only in name only because it had absolutely nothing to do with the first one, and this was Return of the Ape Man, where Bela plays a mad scientist, Professor Dexter, and his assistant, Professor Gilmore, played by John Carradine. They discover a prehistoric caveman frozen in the Arctic ice. I think we covered this a little bit when we did the George Zuko show. But after thawing the creature, they find it too uncontrollable. I mean, yeah, he's not just going to wake up and do a song and dance. And they decide to transplant a human brain or part of one to give it intelligence. And, they give it a brain of a hapless homeless man. I can't think of a better plan or give a brain than a hapless homeless man, Court. Um, there's a there's another great shot from the film. Supposedly, it's supposed to be George Zuko. We know it isn't. And but they promoted it. There's only maybe a still with George Zuko as the ape man. Anyway, he commits all these murders before they all die, or he dies in a lab fire. We've discussed this film before, Court, but what's your take on it?
I like this movie. It's a little slicker than some of the other Monogram productions, and it's always great to see Lugosi playing off another co-star with some status, and in this case, John Carradine. And yeah, George Zuko worked for a day, and then apparently had appendicitis, I guess. And so the only thing of it is that one shot of him that was used as a lobby card with him as the prehistoric man who was then later who was played almost exclusively by Frank Moran. But I think this is a good movie, or I should say it's a fun movie, and it has uh, a slickness to it and kind of a slightly broader canvas than a lot of the other Lugosi monogram pictures. And this is also the period too for him where Monogram decided to put him in a film with a real war theme, and that was there again as a mad doctor in Black Dragons.
All right, yeah. He made a slew of non-horror low budget, like Black Dragons and Bowery at Midnight and stuff like that. And let's not forget that Lugosi did make a dozen at least or so just non-horror, where Black Friday stuff. Oh, that's not low, that's not, but similar to that, where he played a gangster or a henchman, something like that, where he wasn't the star. But then he also did those serials, like you said, Shadow of Chinatown, Chandu,
Yep.
all that stuff, SOS Coast Guard.
SOS Coast Guard, directed by William Whitney. Absolutely.
Right. So anyway, I think he returned. This is the mindset after he did Invisible Ghost. He made The Corpse Vanishes, which to me is like Invisible Ghost. And I think let's stick that one in between us just for the heck of it. We'll give a small one there. The Corpse Vanishes, and very similar. He plays Dr. George Lorenz. Elizabeth Russell, very pretty actress, who underrated in my opinion. They're getting on in their years, Court, and they thought of a way to thwart aging. So they abduct a nubile bride, played by Joan Barclay, and she plans to extract her valuable bodily fluids to inject into his wife. It's just take out of one chick and put into another, and to restore her health and vitality. And another journalist gets in the way. Luana Walters plays a journalist. She's investigating the case of the missing bride. But when the trail leads her to Dr. Lorenz, she doesn't realize she's in danger of becoming the next victim. So, kind of the same along lines of Invisible Ghost, but just instead he's I don't know. It's almost like a Dr. Jekyll, Dorian Gray kind of thing, trying to inject youth into his wife by taking the youth out of other women, as I show a couple photos. What's your take, Court?
Well, I think that's a good way to put it. And of course, also, Corpse Vanishes is, for us, very special because it's Bella collaborating with Angelo Rosito.
Little Angie.
There he is.
It's a great scene, too. Do you like the tune, my dear?
And Elizabeth Russell, of course, was so sinister in Curse of the Cat People and Weird Woman. And she had that cat-like face and was such a striking presence. And but this is an interesting movie. I mean, the scripts under these that were being written by under Sam Katzman's watchful eye, so to speak, we're just getting kind of more and more gonzo. I don't know that the plots being necessarily coherent or having a lot of logic to them really had become the point anymore.
Yeah, logic
And
was thrown out the window,
it really was.
especially in the next one, Court. I think it's a cult favorite of a lot of people, and that's the devil bat, also known as killer bats. It's ludicrous, as you said. Each Lugosi film just keeps getting crazier and crazier, but that's why we love them. I mean, where would the world be? How would we be living today, Court, if there was no devil bat? Um, the plot is Dr. Carruthers. It's from 1940. He's frustrated because he thinks his employers have cheated him out of his company's profits. There's a great scene where they're trying to pay him off, and he realizes it's peanuts compared to what he should be paid. So he decides to get revenge I guess for a living, he makes perfume or cologne. But from that, he decides, I'm going to make large altering bats to grow twice their size and train them to attack when they smell my perfume. How does it go from him being underpaid to creating, 4 foot giant bats? Anyway, he mixes the perfume into a lotion. He offers them to a gift to Mary and Henry. And when they turn up dead, newspaper reporter David O'Brien, who's in all these films, decides to investigate. And every time Lugosi would rub a little the cologne on somebody, he'd say, "Goodbye, Jimmy." I mean, Court, what would life be without the devil bat?
Well, I live in fear of Dr. Carruthers just every single day, because
What of
Lord
him?
knows where he is. Yes.
He's at your front door, Court.
Oh my God. But I mean the ridiculousness of the shaving lotion, and it's just put the dab right here, and then here comes the bat. Which, by the way, that live action footage that they intercut with the prop bat is I believe it's a South American fruit bat, and they're very large animals, but they don't, they don't eat meat,
Right.
and you can tell because they actually look like dogs. They have that long snout, and the uh, the absurdity of the devil bat is one of its great charms. And I think the thing is with the PRC horrors, and we're going to get more into that. Uh, I think, quite honestly, overall, because sometimes they would shoot in a studio that was also rented by Sam Goldwyn, so there was a slickness there and production value for certain PRC horrors like Strangler the Swamp, which we have discussed, and the Devil Bat's daughter, quite honestly, and which to me brought them a few notches above Monogram. Also, they didn't have that awful canned music,
Da 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 da.
yeah, which was recorded in like 1928, and I think hurts the Monogram Mad Doctor pictures. But Lugosi is obviously having great fun in the Devil Bat, and he carries us along. And I'm sure the outtakes, everybody was probably just on the floor
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
because here's the deadly shaving lotion. They must have thought, oh my god,
Right. Put a little here under your neck. And then
yeah,
when they would do it, he'd get so excited. Oh, good. You'll be dead in about
yeah.
5 minutes. The Devil Bat is a great guilty pleasure of mine. I love watching that film. Anyway, it doesn't stop there, Court. Well, actually, I went out of order. So when I say doesn't stop there, I'm still going backwards in time with different films, as like this one, which is Dead Eyes over or Dark Eyes over London, which is better known as The Human Monster. And the thing about this film, Court, I think we've discussed off camera, was even though this is after the Hays Code, because it's 1940, this movie is nothing short of nothing about, it's about torture. This girl here gets tortured and people are drowned. And I'm surprised that got by the censors. But let me give a quick plot cover. In London, philanthropist Dr. Orloff volunteers his services at a home for the blind, which serves as a cover for his notorious exploits, because on the side, he runs an insurance company that offers loans to desperate, unattached men, whom he convinces to list him as a beneficiary. Now listen, in case something bad happens to you, list the good old Dr. Orloff as your beneficiary. Okay, Doc, where do I sign? So with the aid of a blind man, one of the spookiest side monsters in history, uh, he coldly, with his help, Orloff murders these people and collects their insurance. Although the police begin investigation, he brazenly continues the brutal killings. Now, they had Lugosi's voice dubbed as the kind old man who says, "Oh, my dear, thank you for coming." I thought it would be kind of cool if they would have kept uh, his voice as Lugosi, but I guess maybe the producers didn't think it was a good idea. But Court, this is one of the, I think, as I said earlier, it's got torturous scenes. Like, let me show you the next photo here, where he ties his, I mean, torture and bondage. I mean, look at this.
Oh yeah.
I mean, look at this smirk on it. I've got you tied up, and who knows what I'm going to. How did this get past the censors, Court? That's a question I need to ask.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like this movie a lot. It's certainly head and shoulders about everything else that Lugosi was appeared in that was distributed by Monogram. Of course, it was made in England. The director, Walter Summers, was the father of Jeremy Summers, who directed a bunch of Harry Allen Towers movies, including some of the Christopher Lee Fu Manchu movies.
Right.
And that incredible makeup, which was designed by the oh gosh, Jay, maybe you can look this up for me. the wonderful makeup man who did Citizen Kane.
Oh, right. I know who you're talking about. I think the monster's name was Jake, right, Court?
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just looming and just and of course it's like Beauty and the Beast. Lugosi at the end wants to kill this girl, but and he realizes that Lugosi killed Lou, an old man who Jake liked. And it's always like that in a lot of these movies. If it's not the villain himself doing himself in, it's he betrayed his sidekick. And just like he does in this one, and when he killed the old man and then tried to kill this girl, who Jake has now a fondness for, that's it. And the movie's over. Lugosi gets a taste of his own medicine and drowns. But it's just from the organ music to the dialogue to even the police investigation. It doesn't seem like a low budget film, Court.
No, and also too, of course, it's based on material by Edgar Wallace,
Right.
who at the time was just about the most popular author in the world, quite honestly. And the movie was actually remade as Dead Eyes of London, with an actor, a German actor named Ali Berber playing Jake, and it's it's a very very good movie, and it's well directed, and and Lugosi is really good at it, and it is surprising how brutal it is, but it's brutal because and again because it there were no restraints. Now, how they got away with that at this time in England, bypassing the censors, that's for greater minds than mine. I'm sure Tom Weaver or someone has written extensively about this because it can be really shocking.
Right. It is shocking. Anyway, then here's a film that the next one he did, Lugosi, we both agree as a Mad Doctor is kind of silly. I personally find the chance hilarious, and the pairing of Zuko and Lugosi together. And of course, we're talking about Voodoo Man. And as I said, on a whole, the the plot is absolutely ridiculous. But I'll show some photos from it as I give a little bit of the plot line. It's about obviously soul transference, and as the plot goes, it's from 1944. Dr. Richard Marlowe, played by Lugosi, uses voodoo and hypnosis, emotion to emotion, to try to bring his dead wife, Evelyn, back to life by transferring, it's called the life essence court, not the soul, the life essence. From young girls he kidnaps as George Zuko runs a phony gas station, and John Carradine, playing a mute, bumbling fool, brings the girls to Lugosi and Zuko so they could do this transference. The ritual frequently fails. I wonder why, leaving the victims as mindless zombies. But when one of them, Stella, escapes, her boyfriend Ralph and his fiancee Betty, that's interesting. So she has a boyfriend who has a fiance. They get the local sheriff involved, leading to a confrontation with the doctor and his assistants. It's got a lot of bango bonging court. Would you say this is the second worst, or to the Eight Man? Where would you put this?
I think this movie has such a cult following. I think it's absolutely dreadful, and
I'd love when you say that.
and Carradine was so funny about this film because he'd always say, after Billy the Kid versus Dracula, that's the worst. No, that's far from the worst. Good Lord, John. And this picture again, these movies being ground out by the dependable directors like William Bodine and William Nye and these guys who were meeting the tough schedules and getting them done very, very quickly. But the script for this thing is just absolutely out of its mind.
Wait a minute, Court. Rambunai knows, Court.
There you go.
I just think the pairing of them is classic. I mean, they both play two wannabe wizard nutcases who want to transfer the souls of young girls, into his wife. It's crazy. but it works on some sublime level. But anyway, let's close up on the Lugosi Poverty Row films with Zombies on Broadway, which if you take away the two bumbling press agents, Wally Brown and Alan Carney, which were, I guess they were a comedy team back in the day. You take
Yep.
their scenes out, and it's a spooky, uh, almost like an Edgar G. Ulmer, or what's the guy who did the Cat People? That whole series of films. What's his name?
Val Luton.
To me, it's like a Val Luton film if you get rid of the comedy, Court. It might be a bit of a stretch, but I think the makeup, especially on the zombies, are quite scary. What's your take?
Well, of course, it was the same makeup artist who did the Val Luton pictures,
That
including I Walk with a
that's
Zombie.
why.
And, the film was directed by Gordon Douglas. And before he really broke out, and this was RKO. And
No wonder it's a notch above.
yeah, and Notch above. But, like everybody else, Abbott and Costello were having such enormous success that every studio wanted their own Abbott and Costello. So
Carney and
the Alan
Brown.
Carney, Wally Brown, that was RKO's answer.
They basically destroyed the picture for me. I would fast forward during their scenes. I mean, even the Ritz brothers are funnier than these guys.
Yeah, they're not very funny, and but I think you're absolutely right. If you can uh, zip these fellows out of there, you've got a pretty atmospheric, spooky horror picture.
Yeah.
And it was, but Lugosi. I think the strength of him in some of these movies, including the stuff he did with the Bowery Boys, is he was playing it straight. So it gave the comedian something to play off of, but he never uh, dropped his, if you will, I don't want to say his integrity, but he never dropped his approach and kept it, I am playing this role and I'm not going to ham it up, or well, he could have ham it up, but he's going to ham it up in the straight way and not try to be funny. It's going to be the centerpiece and the anchor of the movie. And that's why the films work. If they work at all, it's because of his dedication to it.
Yeah. I mean, just a great, as I said, the Monogram 9 and then the others that he made that are non-horror. I mean, even if you never watched him play Igor or Bela the Gypsy, if you just saw these films, you go, that guy is quite charismatic. He's just quite the actor. And you're right, he can play himself. He is in these East Side Kid movies, where Bela Lugosi meets the East Side Kids or something like that, or Ghosts on the Loose and stuff like that. He does kind of play himself. And when he goes, "Oh, I was never in this house until tonight," it's him acting afraid. He's letting his guard down, which a lot of these stars wouldn't do. They always play it straight the whole way. Okay, so let's move on to another great character actor, Court, who was given the star treatment in these low budget Poverty Row films, and that's George Zucco. And he was able to shine, thank goodness. And I guess the first film that we'll talk about would be Dead Man Walk, and it's a great film where he plays twins, and it's from '43. Good Doctor Lloyd Clayton murders his twin brother Elwyn due to his involvement with Satanism. That's pretty dark for 1943, but Elwyn's dark arts allow him to return from the grave as a vampire. So the plot is crazy. Almost like an Ed Wood kind of plot. Elwyn seeks revenge by targeting Lloyd's niece, Gail, turning her into a vampire and slowly draining her blood. Lloyd and his assistant discover Elwyn's return and in a climactic confrontation attempt to destroy him in his accursed library, which results in a fire that traps and kills them all. Court, this reeks of almost being a crazy Universal film because it's actually a high quality looking film for being Poverty Row.
Well, that's what I said. PRC had a touch that I think has gone unappreciated. And whether they were shooting on sets that have been built for other movies or whatever their formula was. Uh, I think it elevates their horror pictures. And again, Dead Men Walk because you've got George Zuko playing two separate parts, and he does it very, very well. And I know when I used to go see the director Reginald Leborg, uh, and we'd sit around in the afternoon and chat. He loved George Zuko. Just thought he was a great guy, but he said this he was so uh, dedicated and so precise that when he would arrive on the set, he knew exactly what he was going to do. And it was not like he was unmovable with direction, but if you said, okay, George, how do you see this? He could go through it and then you'd say, all right, well, that works or this doesn't work or whatever. And then you'd make adjustments. And he was right there for it. He was extremely cooperative. And when you see him in films beyond these movies where he kind of has his cult reputation, I'm thinking of something like Hunchback of Notre Dame with Charles Lawton. Uh, George Zuko was a good actor and a prestigious actor. So for PRC to get him to do films like Dead Men Walk and The Black Raven and that whole series of movies, that was quite a coup for them.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, so glad these films, have come out, and we're going to discuss them right now. After that, or when I say after that, I mean, in the show's terms, not in chronological order. Dr. Renal's Secret, which is a crazy, crazy movie with George Zuko and J. Carroll Naish, and it's that ape theme again. It's from 1942. Zuko plays Dr. Larry Forbes. He travels to a remote French village to marry Madeline, the niece of a scientist. Oh, I'm sorry, the scientist is Dr. Renal, not Larry Forbes. Until on his arrival, Forbes discovers that Renal's strange manservant, Noel, is actually a Javanese ape surgically transformed into a human by Renaud himself. So the plot follows the ensuing murders in the chateau, the escalating suspicion on Noel, and the eventual confrontation where Noel, after escaping, kills Dr. Renaud and attempts to kidnap Madeline before being shot and killed by Forbes. This is a crazy. It's like it's Captive Wild Woman, it's the Ape Man, it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This movie is all over the place, Court.
No, it is. And of course, now this movie was 20th Century Fox,
Okay.
and they were like with this and The Undying Monster and some other movies, they were also chasing the box office that they saw Universal and Monogram and PRC scooping up. And they're like, hey, these guys are making all this money with these horror pictures. We need to start making some of our own and get that cash going.
Right.
And J. Carroll Nash, I remember reading Henry Fonda was not fond of J. Carroll Nash. And he said because he had done a really, I think, wonderful movie with Fonda for John Ford called The Fugitive. And Fonda said of Nash, he was the kind of actor who liked to cry. And certainly he cries in The House of Frankenstein.
Right.
And here he is once again put upon kind of almost half wit, but of course he's half ape.
Right.
But Nash could really absorb himself into these roles and even do things with his facial expression and what have you. Is very, very skilled and very interesting. But this movie is as crazy as anything PRC ever dreamed of.
Right. And the makeup is a little bit like Frederick March and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
That's right.
Very similar. So let's see. Next up, we have we're going to do Scared to Death, which for some reason or another was made in color, and you can I'll get Court's take on why that was. And what's interesting about this film, it's probably the only color horror film made by a low budget Poverty Row studio in the late 40s that had George Zucco, it had Bela Lugosi, it had Nate Pendleton, it had little Angie Rosito, so it had a huge cast. The plot goes, Zuko plays Dr. Joseph Van E. He runs a private mental institution where he and his son Ward are keeping his daughter-in-law Laura, played by the lovely Molly Lamont, against her will. She's the corpse in the movie who narrates it from the beginning. She's convinced her husband's trying to scare her away from their marriage, while Ward assures her that she needs the help he's offering. Things go from bad to worse, where Van E's brother, the magician Professor Leonide, played by Lugosi, shows up with his dwarf partner Indigo, one of the great little person names in history for a film. Indigo, Indigo, get my cape. Court, this was shot in color. Do you want to give your reasons why I think that was?
Well, that was quite a little bold move uh, by the producers, and it was directed by Christy Cabani, and who was starred with D.W. Griffith. Actually, he was partnered very often with Raoul Walsh, and it's I think it was just an extra bit of oomph for the box office because there were so many uh, films like this being made, just straight black and white programmers, whether they came from the studios, whether they came from the independent producers, whoever it was, and absolutely nobody was doing a horror film in color. And that's what made this completely different than those other films. I
And
think it just
how about
really
the
boils down to that.
what about the corpse narrating the film, Court? That was kind of new and different.
Very much so. Very pre Billy Wilder. So, pre Sunset Boulevard. And
And Lugosi's great in this too.
he and Angela Rosito, I always felt that the way they handled Vern Troyer and Marlon Brando in the Dr. Moreau remake was based on this. That
Wow.
to see little Angie and Bela, and they're dressed the same, and uh, kind of this, the little sidekick. I've always felt that, and I have no idea if it's true or not, but they make such a striking image because they're just this bizarre, kind of mirror of each other, only shrunk down.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if that was an homage to that. So let's move on, Court, to one of the great George Zucco low budget fares, and that's The Flying Serpent, and which Larry Cohen later remade as Q, although Larry denies that's what he did when I interviewed him. But anyway, The Flying Serpent's a super fun film, even though you can see the Q, the serpent, Quetzalcoatl on strings, and it had that same horrible monogram music that you can't stand, Court, every time it would dive in. But Zuko plays a deranged archaeologist, Professor Forbes. He discovers the winged serpent. It's an Aztec legend, Quetzalcoatl, and it's guarding an ancient treasure. He learns that the creature will kill anyone possessing its feathers and uses this knowledge to murder his enemies by planting a feather on them. How do you put it in their backpack or in their back pocket? How do you do that without them noticing? And then he releases the beast to carry out the attack. Forbes eventually targets his stepdaughter's radio host friend, Richard Thorpe, who's an ornithologist. That's one you don't hear every day, leading to a confrontation with the creature. They always get their comeuppance, Court. When you invent a creature, whether it's the devil bat, the flying serpent, I always thought the flying serpent was the Zuko answer to the devil bat. What do you think?
Well, yeah, because it's the same studio, PRC. Uh, and yeah, I mean, this is an amazingly, it is the same thing. Instead of shaving lotion, it's the feather. And the the serpent itself is no more animated and lifelike than the devil bat was. Although the puppet is a lot of fun, and I think uh, this one was done pretty much lickety split, and
In a couple
get it
days,
out
maybe.
there.
I think it was like was it, like 3 to 5 days, maybe.
Yeah, probably yes. And there was a host on for movies back in Pittsburgh when I was growing up, and he had a thing about Wheeler Oakman, the character actor, and he was always in the PRC movie. So every time he ran a PRC movie, and he ran this one all the time, he always said, "Look for Wheeler Oakman." So that
Right.
became another obsession.
And then, Court, the last film of the Zuko low budget ones, we've discussed it previously, but it's worth going over again, is The Mad Monster from 1942. Dr. Lorenzo Cameron, played by Zuko, is disfigured and discredited. Well, which scientist isn't? By his peers, and he uses a blood transfusion serum to transform his simple minded gardener, Petro, into a werewolf, which is silly, but at least Glenn Strange is big and hulky with those pointy teeth. Zuko then unleashes his monstrous creation upon his colleagues who ridiculed him, very similar to the Devil Bat, seeking revenge for his ruined career. His daughter Lenora and a newspaper reporter, Tom Gregory, become suspicious and investigate the murders, uncovering the truth behind the werewolf attacks. I think a lot of people have a soft spot in their heart for this film. Are you one of them, Court?
Oh yeah, and you've got that wonderful scene with Zuko where he's in an empty room, but he imagines the people sitting around the table who had given him a hard time and had dismissed his work. And I think that's a great thing. And I know that Glenn Strange, Lon Chaney, and Glenn Strange were good friends. And he went to him one day and said, "What the hell are you trying to do?" And Glenn's like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, I saw the Mad Monster, and for the first half you're Lenny, and the second half you're the Wolf Man." And Glenn had told that story several times in interviews. And what he, and he said, "Oh no, this think of it as a tribute." And they were very good friends. But what he said he could never get over was Lon Chaney going to some movie theater in downtown LA to watch the Mad Monster.
That that is crazy. I mean, eating his popcorn, maybe sneaking in
Yeah,
a beer. You see, stories like that are just so great. They go along with the film. I mean, of course, when we did the Carradine show, you had your Carradine stories. I mean, it's just that's part of it. I mean, that's part of the fun. They were all. I think that's why they were all friends. Court. I mean, they build up these rivalries, but then you see the publicity photos of Lugosi and Karloff and Cheney and Carradine and Zuko. I mean, someone should make a movie about those days and what it was like to make those movies. It would be a big budget film, obviously. You have to have top name actors recreating those great roles. I always thought, Court, getting sidetracked, to do a remake of The Black Cat, and have William Dafoe as Karloff and Robert De Niro or Armand Desante as Lugosi. I mean, this was 20, 30 years ago before they were old. De Niro with his hair back. You talking to me? As Lugosi. But that's why, what was that movie? Of God and Monsters with Brendan
yes.
Fraser, who befriends James Whale. I love that film because they go to a party and there's Karloff and there's Elsa Lanchester. I wanted more of that party. Didn't you?
Oh, the party at George Cukor's house.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we got one last actor to cover, Court, and that's John Carradine. Even though we've covered his career, I don't think we've covered these two films at length. Anyway, the first one is Revenge of the Zombies, which is a classic film, very similar to those Halperin zombie films. And it goes as this: Scott Warrington, played by Moritz Hugo, returns to his childhood home in Louisiana after learning that his deceased sister, Lila, played by the beautiful Veda Ann Borg, may have been poisoned. He brings a detective with him, Robert Laurie, and they switch identities to protect Scott. And at first, they find only Lila's sad husband, I'm Dr. Von Alderman, which is John Carradine, who, surprise, surprise, he's really a Nazi who's been performing a way to turn the dead, including Lila, into an army of zombies who will serve Hitler. She's big and strong, and she'll serve the Fuhrer. So I know this is one of your kind of low budget faves too, Court.
Oh yeah, no, I think, and the thing is, this movie actually, for good or ill, uh, set a lot of, if you will, certain uh, racial stereotypes are really brought to the fore in this film. It's embarrassing, but this is the movie that "Feet Don't Fail Me Now" and all this kind of stuff is quoted from, and people don't remember. They remember maybe the offensive dialogue, but they don't remember the movie that it was featured in. And
Like a Step and Fetch It skit or something.
exactly, and of course, Vida Ann Borg at this time was married to the director Andy McLaughlin before he, you know, really hit it with all of his John Wayne movies and stuff. And he was an assistant director at this point. And Robert Lowry, again, borrowing somebody, he had had a quickie uh, multi-picture deal at Universal, which included The Mummy's Ghost, and then back to freelancing. And what is Monogram doing? Well, let's go over there and knock out something for a couple of days, and then you move on to the next. And Carradine, I think, is great fun in this movie, and again, he's allowed to shine because with the exception of a movie like Bluebeard, the thing with John Carradine, and I think the reason he found so much, if you will, comfort and uh, freedom on Poverty Row. Of course, he was in demand, and though in those days he was known for having an absolutely fantastic memory, so he could, rattle off dialogue in one take like it was nobody's business. But he would come to the things as the star. He was not the star of Stagecoach. He wasn't the star of Prisoner of Shark Island or Grapes of Wrath or any of the things, or Blood and Sand that he did with Tyrone Power, or any of the films that he did at Fox, or the things he did with John Ford. But here he was the star. And even at Universal, he was very often paired with Lon Chaney, or in the House pictures, of course, it was with a whole bunch of folks. And I think that's uh, one of the reasons he shines so much in movies like Revenge of the Zombies, because it's his show.
Yeah. And the same goes for this last final film that I was waiting to get to. The Face of Marble is probably one of the strangest horror films ever made. It's a B movie from '46. It mixes voodoo and science, and it follows Carradine's a doctor whose experiments to reanimate the dead go terribly wrong, complicated by a love triangle and a housekeeper's supernatural meddling. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy film, and the plot is Dr. Charles Randolph, played by Carradine's a brain surgeon, his assistant David Cochran, moved to a secluded coastal home to privately conduct experiments on reanimating dead tissue. And they attempt to revive a recently drowned sailor using an electrical charge and a serum. The experiment's a partial success, but the man dies again after his face momentarily freezes like marble, hence the title, Face of Marble. So Dr. Randolph's wife Elaine is unhappy with his sinister research. This is one of the films where usually the wife usually goes along with the crazy stuff. I mean, they cannot like it, but this is one of the only few films where the wife just basically leaves the husband, falls in love, with somebody else, with the assistant. And the Randolph's housekeeper Maria is devoted to her, and she practices voodoo. So when Elena complains about her husband's experiments, Maria tries to help by placing a voodoo curse on David to make him love Elaine. David quickly destroys the voodoo doll, causing Maria to put up a broader curse on the house. And let's see, how does it end? It ends when the mad scientist's obsession intensifies and his personal life falls apart. Elaine, his wife, dies. A supernatural force from the experiments or Maria's voodoo causes her to become a murderous, ghost-like entity, kind of like um, the girl in Son of Dracula court that can also pass through walls. And after a confusing and deadly series of events, Carradine is killed and Elaine's ghost disappears. It is a wacky, crazy film. It also has a killer dog in it, Cord.
And Robert Shane.
Right. What do you think of this film? It's all over the place.
It is all over the place, and it's another one from William Bodine, uh, and kind of a little bit later in the Monogram horror cycle. And I know Bob Shane in various interviews said, by this time, of course, he was still a few years away from becoming Inspector Henderson on Superman. Uh, but he didn't appreciate Carradine's overplaying.
What do you
And
mean, Cord?
John, was pretty flamboyant, and Bob Shane was not. And he thought he was kind of being run over a little bit, I guess.
That happens a lot, Court. And if you were some of these stories from some of these horrors, the co-stars from these horror films, they'll have nice things to say, but as you said, you said Henry Fonda complained a little bit about J. Carroll Nash, and here you have oh, he was a little flamboyant, he was over the top, he was stepping on my lines. It's not all going to be, roses and rose petals and stuff. There's going to be, I don't know. But it's a John Carradine film. And so at the time, you just kind of go with the punches. You don't stir up any trouble. But I guess that's the way it went in those days. But I think for the most part, it was mutual respect from all
Oh,
those
sure.
stars. So, Court, what's your final take on Poverty Row and their contribution to horror in general?
Well, one movie I think I'd really love to mention because when they would slip things by the censors and they would explore themes that maybe they shouldn't have been touching, but who was the hell was paying attention to these movies anyway? And that's the what I think is the best PRC horror film, aside from Bluebeard, which is Edgar G. Ulmer, which is
Right,
wonderful, and that's The Monster Maker with J. Carroll Nash as the mad scientist. And what I love about this movie, even though it's got a gorilla in it and all that stuff, is the motivation for J. Carroll Nash is so awful and so sinister that when he gets jealous and he thinks somebody is coming after his wife, he infects them with acromegalia.
that's what he does to Ralph Morgan.
That's exactly what he does to Ralph Morgan. And it's like, my God, I mean, that's awful.
Well, you get to live with a big face that's enlarged, and you get to look like
Yep,
Rondo Hatton for the rest of your life.
that's right. And and the actor I couldn't think of, and I didn't even have my thing to look it up, was Wilfred Walters, the ape man in
Oh, okay, that's right.
Dark Eyes of London.
So,
And but it's a uh, really horrible idea, and they got away with it.
right, and that's what
And
that's what you could do in a Poverty Row horror film that you couldn't maybe
exactly
do.
right. That's the thing. It's kind of like, oh, wait a minute, let me examine this a little more closely. And when you do, I think you always get surprised by what they actually managed to sneak by this censor or what they themes that they were exploring. It was just, hey, I'm banging this script out. Let me throw this in there and see if anybody catches it.
Right.
And very often they didn't.
Well, absolutely. So, Court, that kind of wraps up our ode or homage to PRC and Monogram and Majestic and even Republic, and we even covered some Columbia, because that's the ones that Karloff did. But it's just, where would we be without the yin and the yang? You just don't have top big budget Universal, MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount. You have Poverty Row. and they were made in anywhere from a week to 2 weeks on a low budget, reusing the same locations and actors and crew, and they served a purpose. And there's a great book called Poverty Row Horrors that I would suggest getting if you want to read more into that. But Cord, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Thanks for your insight as always.
Oh man, no, I love it, and it's always, Jay. The thing is that just if we're shining a little bit of a light on these movies and on the people who made them, and these actors who are maybe just picking up some lunch money in between bigger assignments, but still doing interesting work.
Right, and that's what it is. They absolutely added to the history of classic horror. I mean, as I said, I don't know what we do without the Devil Bat or the Flying Serpent or Revenge of the Zombies or Face of Marble. These were needed and necessary. So, Cord, thanks again. And
Thank you.
yes, of course. And it's always an honor to have you. And I want to thank our fans, the monster kids out there, the classic Universal monster fans, for watching this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and tell all your friends that we're here on YouTube and we talk about classic Universal horror and sometimes Poverty Row. So for the great Courtney Joyner, I am Jay Jennings. We'll see you next time on the Classic Universal Horror Podcast. Goodbye, Court.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. Join us next time when we'll cover other topics like Universal Horror, Poverty Row, and profiles on people like Bela Lugosi, John Carradine, Peter Lorre, and even on myself. Until next time, stay scared.